tell us a little bit more about the Carp Catchers Club?
I was never a member, so
No, I know. That's why I'm asking. You know, the things that I've read, there was probably more people that warranted being part of it, even if I may say so, my dear May Birth. And I wondered whether she was ever spoken about being invited into the Carp Catchers Club.
well, there was one or two people that didn't qualify because the qualification for carp was a carp over £10 in those days. Well, Dick Kefford had never had a carp over 10, and he was invited. So it was not just the fish; it was the type of person you were. I did inquire about it, but
well, I'm just surprised, you know, when I've read a bit different things, that your name wasn't included at one time.
well, not well. I didn't. I hadn't done anything on carp really at all. I really kind of got into hot water a bit in 1953. I remember that because I was in the RAF. Dick Walker, underwater rail name, had been writing all sorts of in the Fishing Gazette how to catch carp. He did a big 2-series piece called How to Catch Carp, and I wrote a letter to the Fishing Gazette saying that I thought he wasn't doing carp fishing any favours because everybody would be doing it and it would spoil it, you see, which I was proved right, I think. But of course Maurice Ingham didn't like this particularly and wrote a letter criticising me for having such thoughts, you know, really. It was no big deal, but yeah, that was...
Even amongst gentlemen, a little bit of friction.
Yeah, there was... Yeah.
In my experience, and I only met him 2 or 3 times, Mr. Walker, it was difficult to get on the wrong side of him.
I did once.
He... He's not her favourite fella because when we were engaged to be married, he kind of got me on one side one day and said, "Don't get married, John. It'll spoil your fishing." And Valerie heard him.
I never forgave him. My memory is long when it's necessary.
and vision.
But it was the way he said it, you know, my word is law.
He could be arrogant, Dick. He was a very clever man and he was a very kind bloke too in many ways, with children and such like.
I used to put that in the pound, shouldn't I?
Very generous to his friends as well, John.
Yes.
Very generous to his friends.
Yes.
Keep myself without bringing
Yes.
water, haven't I?
Yes, it was sad he died so young, really. He was 68, wasn't he, I think?
Bernard told me that he had a fire when he lived in Sussex, lost most of his fishing tackle, and Dick kind of replaced a great deal of it for him.
Yeah. But of course he and Walker didn't actually get on all that
They
well.
fell out.
Yeah, there's a picture somewhere, I don't know if I've got it or I've just seen it somewhere, of me, Walker and Venables and maybe somebody else at one of the fishing exhibitions, Alexandra Palace, standing in a group chatting.
We used to go, didn't we, when it was the boat show and they had an angling section and we used to go and
Oh, the boat show, yeah.
talk to people about the fishing.
Bernard Venables was on the prowl for attractive young ladies. He did a gimmick thing in the pool at the boat show, playing a champion swimmer on a harness and a rod and line. And one of them was Judy Grinham, who was a champion swimmer. The funniest thing I remember about Bernard was the other time I fished with him was in Gibraltar, shark fishing. They had the Week of the Sea down there, and we went down, and we were on this boat, and I was up on the roof of the cabin. So Bernard hooked a shark, and it wasn't an enormous shark, but it was a kind of couple of £100 blue shark. and he got it in the boat a bit, gaffed it into the boat a bit too soon, and its tail came up and knocked about 3 of his front teeth out. So he was upset about this. And then there was another bloke there who was the public relations manager for Gibraltar Tourist Board, called John Joseph Gomez O'Reilly. That was his full name. He was kind of half Irish, half Gibraltarian, half Spanish. And he was a plump chap, very nice bloke. And he was up on the cabin of the boat when they were playing a shark once, because it was quite a small boat, and you've got a big shark on the deck and down there. And he fell from the cab, fell into the water, and they had to kind of knit him out with a gaff hook. You know, it took him more trouble getting him out than it did the shark.
John, tell us about your earliest experiences of angling. How did you start?
I started, we had a neighbour, I lived on a farm, a poultry farm, up in Hawley. And we had in 1947, I was 14, and we had a neighbour across the road who was a mechanic, a motor engineer had a business at Norwood. He bought this bungalow opposite. He had 4 dogs, and I got to know him, and he used to take the dogs for walks. You know, it's St Bernard, 2 spaniels and a dachshund, quite a sight together. He asked me if I'd like to go fishing one day, and I spent the night at his place. And he was a widower, or divorcee, I'm not sure which. We went over to the little pond called Beasley's behind the Coppingham Arms at Hawley. Still there, the pond, but there's no fish in it now. And it was full of wild carp, up to about 3-4 pounds. So we caught lots of wild carp there, and that was my start of fishing. Just a little float with a lump of paste underneath.
Did you caught the bug?
And caught the bug, yeah.
When we chatted last time, John, you said about when you were told to strike.
Oh yeah, on one of those trips with Mr. Golding, his name was, known as G. The float went under. My very first carp. The float went under, and I just stood there, you know, not doing anything. And he called out to me. He was just fishing just along the bank. He said, "Strike!" So I went boom like that, and this carp shot out the water right over my head into the brambles behind. And by the time I got it out the brambles, it was dripping blood. And I said, "First blood," and he said, "Literally." That was the very first carp I ever had.
So you're incredibly well travelled, John, in the 50s and 60s. You got about
in the
a lot more.
In the 60s,
Most.
in the 60s, well, because I was with Creel, that's the only real reason I went, you know, to various places. Went to Ireland a lot. The only place really I've been on my own or with a family is Ireland, west coast of Ireland. Lovely, lovely spot for sea fishing. We stayed up at Achill, on Achill Island.
Lovely.
It's called. Have you been there?
Yeah, that's where I'm from.
And the irony is it's largely unspoilt to this day.
Yeah, I wouldn't try. Yeah, we bought some land over there. We were going to build a bungalow, you know, but then the problems arose, and we decided it wasn't worth the risk. So we sold it. But we stayed at a beach house, which was the McHugh family. There was the husband and wife, and they had 2 boats. And the daughter, Sheila, she was the best little fisherwoman I've ever known, you know. I've got a picture of her in the book there. You know, we had some really nice days there, didn't we?
Yes, every year we used to do it.
Used to take our 2 boys over. They loved it. They had a very placid cow used to graze in the garden. And the boys, because it was so placid, the boys christened it Vicious.
Just call out.
That's it, yeah.
Did you fish Dingle Peninsula at all, John?
Yes, bass fished with Ian Gillespie. Yeah.
So all in all, John, it's been a fantastic journey, hasn't it?
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I can't complain. I've been lucky up to now. Things aren't too bright now for me, but and I had a good wife.
Of course.
Looked after me.
Tolerated you.
Tolerated me and the fishing. We've been married 63 years.
We're still in the same house.
Yeah, we bought the house when we got married, and we're still there. Well, it's a bungalow, so it is nice. It's
handy.
getting old.
Shows it works.
Yeah.
It works.
In the pictures of you, red, well, not on red mine, but some pictures I've seen of you, you're using some aloft, white aloft, which look, I don't know, they look unusual.
But I made them myself.
They were homemade.
Yeah, I made them with a little bulb in and a 3-wire connection through to a separate box at the end of a cable.
So were they similar to a heron, or did they, were they split by the line? Were they contact split by it?
They were, well, a pair of contacts with a wire which went up, and the wire had a kink in it, so that raindrops dropped off outside the box and not in the box. I've got one at home actually. Perhaps I should have bought it.
So we just stayed.
So you took kind of the heron design and then just
Well, yeah, this was before the heron came out. This was back in the early 60s, maybe late 50s. I made these, I made all my own tackle in a way, rod rests and everything. I made a lot of stuff out of RAF materials. The little junction box with 2 lights on and 2 different tone buzzers for which rod was going. Well, it was from a hawker hunter, that.
Museum piece.
Use for your carp fishing, John?
Sorry?
What hooks did you use for your carp fishing?
Mostly, well, I was using Alcock Alcock something. It was a size 4 mainly, for the bigger carp. Yeah, with a little twist in it,
Model Perfect?
Model Perfect. That's right, Alcock Model Perfect. Stanley was their reel, wasn't it? Yeah, Alcock Model Perfect.
And they were eyed, you tied them on, or?
They had through the eye at the top. The eye was bent round through the eye, and then whipped onto the onto the shank. Yeah, but then B. James brought out a range of hooks, which just weren't strong enough. They were very good and fine. They penetrated well, but if you had a really heavy fish, and it wasn't hooked really deep, they just opened up.
Did you ever use low water salmons at all?
No.
What about, did you always use mono, or did you ever use any of the other?
No, I did, because the record, Walker's record carp was caught on nylon, not mono, braid. Yeah, 12 pound I think. Well, the first mono, of course, was awful stuff. Luron 1. Luron 2 was much better. But the chap who taught me fishing, he had a great big sea reel, which was loaded with monofill. And this was back in 1947, long before Luron came out. And I asked him where he got it, and it was actually medical. Yeah. And he got somehow got hold of a big reel of it, and it was quite good, very strong.
A lot of us who started fishing in the early 50s, like 54 at that time, I think most of us used Luron too.
Yeah. But what was the one I found? I went on to mainly, round about in the 60s, or late 50s. I can't remember the name of it now. It was German, I think.
Did you ever experiment with baits?
Not a lot back in those days. it was either flake or potatoes.
Boilies.
Boilies, yeah. Not boilies, no.
Wasn't it boilies?
No, they were boiled potatoes, but we didn't call them boilies. No, boilies is a different bait.
A friend of mine
I've never used boilies.
used to use parboiled parsley in the early 60s
Yeah.
in Glemsford.
Well, bracken was all potatoes back in the 50s and 60s because they used to bait up with them. But obviously they were not the best, really. Best.
Do you remember the time when, I don't know how it came about, but you'd left some maggots in their house and they got out from wherever you put them and they then came to meet us when we opened the front door? Do you remember that?
No.
Well, you never dared do it twice because
I had that happen last weekend. One of the bait pots of yours, I left it in the cooler bag in the kitchen and the lid weren't on right.
Oh, you blame your knee?
Sue got up,
in
Sue
the
got
other
up,
section.
Sue got up the following morning and she said to me, there's a parade of maggots in the kitchen.
I've had them in Mum's fridge when I was a kid, and she didn't think it was right to put them in there. And as soon as they got out, that was it. That was the last time.
Did you ever catch any river carp?
No, never had a river carp.
We were on holiday.
I fished Kingston, which is where there were quite a few by Canberra Gardens there. Yeah, but I've never had one.
So have you ever fished any of the London parks, like Norwood or Crystal
No,
Palace?
never.
I think if you lived in London, right in the middle of London, you was more inclined. Like parks there, we had loads of parks that we used
Yeah.
as kids. Yeah. Especially all around sort of my Tottenham way, all over there.
Yeah.
What do you think, John? These days, specialism seems to be the name of the game, whereas not so many years ago, people would be able to throw a fly line, go sea fishing, universally fish across the board.
Yeah.
But nowadays, people seem to specialise more often than they did.
Well, I don't know whether they do or whether it's just the press, you know, articles
Perhaps so.
kind of identify people because of what they fish for. I've fished for everything at one time. I've even fished for salmon, but didn't catch it. Well, I caught a kelp.
But people in the 60s and 70s would fish sea fishing,
Oh yeah,
game
yeah,
fishing,
yeah,
coarse fishing.
yeah. But I don't think I would have ever sea fished if it hadn't been for joining Creel. I got invited, you know, all over the place sea fishing, Bermuda and places like that.
Do you think that's a retrograde move, that people nowadays specialise a good deal?
I think it's up to them. I wouldn't say it's retrograde
One man's meat is another man's poison, so
or possum.
indeed.
How did you get to work for Creel?
I worked for Mullard originally, and the ad,
At Salford, isn't it?
well, I was in London at head office. Well, there was an advert. I can't remember where it was, but looking for an editor for Creel. So I applied and got it was elected like that. There was only 2 staff. Well, Bernard was the editor, but he was earning more money with them. I mean, he was on 9,500 a year, and the Humber Super Snipe company car. When I joined, I was on 1,500 a year. Now that's some drop, and no company car. But it was more than I was getting anyway at Mullard's. I was getting about 1,200 with Mullard. So anyway, you know, I got the job. But it was you know, a great job to begin with.
It was hard work as well, John.
It was hard work, yeah, but it was interesting work. For the first time, I was really interested in what I was doing, so I enjoyed it.
Is there anything you wish you had done more of?
I wish I'd caught, I fished for game fish once, when I say game fish, sorry, not salmon and trout, big game, down the Canary Islands, and I wish I'd had the chance to go in other places like Capablanca and places like that and really catch a marlin, something like that, which I never did. Had plenty of sharks, but and had what's the like pike, the barracuda. Had several barracuda in Bermuda, but that was all. Now, I would like to have at least said I'd caught a marlin or a swordfish. I would have liked to have caught a fresh run salmon, I must admit. You know, like in Norway when Arthur Oglesby, who I knew, he caught a 60-pound salmon in Norway.
Who was the most impressive angler that you ever met?
I could say Bernard Venables, couldn't I? But I won't. No. Well, I suppose as an angler, Walker, obviously, but as a man, as a fishing companion, Dick Keffin.
Good man, well done.
Dick Keffin.
Please to hear.
He was a charming bloke.
He was a gentleman.
A gentleman angler.
He was a veterinary surgeon, wasn't he?
Veterinary, yeah.
Yeah.
Very kind man.
That was nice, and that's why we used to go and have lunch with them sometimes, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, we used to meet them on the way down to Redmire, didn't we?
It sounds if there was a list, Mr. Walker would be a little bit way down that list. I think. You know.
Well, it depends what you're judging people on, doesn't it, in a way?
As a gentleman.
As a gentleman, oh yeah, he was no gentleman. He could fake it, mind you. He had a good sense of humour, I'll say that for him. He had a tremendous sense of humour, and some of his stories. He wrote me a long letter once that was basically stories about what had happened to him and during the war. When he went out shooting pheasant, he didn't go in the forces because he was on a reserved occupation, but he went out shooting pheasant up in Norfolk, I think, with a 303 rifle, and he got picked up by the police and then taken to court, and he pleaded self-defence. and he had them in such laughter, they let him off.
I only got the pleasure of meeting Dick Keffin. I did a little book with Maurice Ingham about the Carp Catchers Club.
Oh yeah.
And I got to meet Dick as a result of that. But he and Diane were such kind, generous people. Their hospitality was incredible. Every time we would go, it was wonderful to go and see him.
It's sad, his wife died. She died of Alzheimer's, I think.
He did, I remember well.
Yeah.
I was going to go
Well, he had that cottage on the island.
so I used to go up and see them, say that, and fish there as well.
I always regret not going up because he used to entertain BB. Not often, I don't think, but BB had been to that cottage on the island, and I wish I'd gone up at that time to meet BB, because he would have been. There's a story about BB. What is it now? Oh, I always love his little bit he has in the front of the book. Every book he wrote. The wonder of the world, the beauty and the power of things.
Colours and lights and shades.
Colours, their lights, their shades.
You also highlight what
That's right. Yeah.
Caught a record shark.
Yeah, I caught in the Canary Islands. We were staying with some friends there. They'd gone out from Hove, John Holmes and his wife, and they took their boat and sailed down to the Canary Islands. And we went down and we went out shark fishing on their boat. And it was off the Cantras Beach in Gran Canaria. And right at the end of the day, I had a squid out as bait. Oh no, I had a squid, but John had a squid on his rod as well. And his squid was floating quite near the surface. And suddenly we saw this shark come up and gobbled it down, you see. So he struck it and then passed the rod to me. He says, come on, he says, it's your last day here. Take my rod. And it didn't give us much of a fight, but we got it in. It dived down once, and it's very deep water there. This is only about 2 miles off the coast. we finally played it, and we realised it was a very big blue shark, and we got it into the boat and put it up on the gin post with a spring balance, and it was over £300. So he said, I think we may have a record here. So we took it back into the harbour there, and how the hell do you get a £300 fish up the wall of the harbour? But a Spanish collier boat came alongside us and helped us with their derrick, picked it up and put it up on the weighbridge, and it was £341. It was the record for a couple of years, and it's been beaten now, not by a lot, but a bit. And that night it went to a hotel and was cut up for food. And they had a hell of a party. The American aircraft carrier, the Kearsarge, funny how you remember these things, isn't it? Was in dock there. It had been picking up satellites that dumped in the ocean, and the captain of the Kearsarge, what's his name now? It was a very strange name. It's straight out of Disney. Commander, Lieutenant Commander, I'll think of it in a minute. And he held this party for everybody, and he had the local paper along and everything, you know. It was the first world record for the Canaries. We sent it off to California, and I've still got a letter from the IGFA in California inviting me to go out game fishing with them anytime I happen to be in California, because I'm a world record holder. Oh, I remember the captain of the Kearsarge was Lieutenant Commander Nicholas Fantasia.
You don't forget a name.
So really, the offer's still there.
Yeah, always will be.
Adventure for you.
I don't suppose I shall ever go now, but
Do you still get out at all, John? Do you? None at all?
not fishing now, no. I wouldn't be safe on the bank or wherever. No, I'm too tired. I'm just very weary these days.
How old are you now, John?
90. Not in July.
We had a big family party for it.
That's my target.
It's not that unusual these days. We've got several neighbours that are.
But you're in good company, John. Friend like Peter Wheat, you may remember.
Peter Wheat, yeah.
We speak often, and Peter doesn't much fish these days.
No,
There comes a point when it's just not.
no. This is why I'm selling the tackle.
You're thinking about it.
You know, and getting rid of what I can. I've still kept one or two rods. I've kept my Mark IV Avon that I caught my first decent carp on, £9 back in 60. What was it? No, 50. 53, I think it is. Jimmy James Mark IV Avon, 1953. I've kept that. And I've kept a fly rod, just in case, one of each. I've got a lovely sea rod, Davenport and Fordham, #1 boat rod, with a Polikansky reel. It was given to me by Jaime Polikansky. He gave me one of his original ones way back when he first started making them, because he was South African now. And he came over to this country and he had a nice flat off Park Lane, and his office was in just off Oxford Street, and he handed me this Polikansky reel, and then 2-3 years later he says, "Have you still got that reel I gave you?" I said yes. And it was on the other rod that was out of his sight, you see, so I handed it over to him. And he brought out this brand new Polikansky monitor, which is a lovely little well, it's a beach caster, but it's a lovely little boat reel. Handed me this. He says, "That's because you kept the other one in such good condition."
Don't you think, John, in the world of angling, there are many more nice people than not so nice?
Oh yes, yeah. I always remember, which is another story, but I'll get to that in a minute. A woman asked me once, said her young boy wants to take up fishing. And she said, do you think, you know, you're an angler, do you think that would be a good thing? So I said, yes. I said, keep him off street corners, keep him off drugs, everything. And yeah, I hope it did some good.
I'm sure it did.
The story I was going to tell, I mean, I think David has already heard it. I used to sit on a committee called the Angling Development Committee in London. We used to meet once a month, and the object of it was to train people to teach kids fishing. We weren't teaching the kids, we were teaching the people to train them. And the chap in charge of it worked for the Central Council of Physical Recreation. He was known as Joe. He sat at the head of the table every meeting. Joe. His name's Basil, but he couldn't stand the name Basil. So he went under the name of Joe. And he used to spend the first 5 minutes of every meeting moaning about his young son, who was about 15 years old, was spending his evenings strumming his guitar with a couple of mates up in his bedroom, not doing his homework. All this, you see. But it was Joe Jagger, Mick's father. Yeah.
Well, that's a chain and a half, isn't it? My goodness.
Because being near,
Yeah.
not far
He was a very nice bloke.
um,
And that's why I think Mick
to
Jagger is fairly well grounded, you know,
I would think so.
because he had a good family.
You know the feeling, don't you?
Yeah, down in Kent, yeah. Cool, we covered a lot of ground, didn't we?
Well, that was the whole idea, wasn't it?
Is that recording all the time?
What is it? I've been fascinated to read it all.
You have to cut that bit out.
Is it, are they recording the conversation? I see.
These days, the old days, you used to have a tape, you know, it ran out.
I was going to say, I've seen one of those before.
Well, neither of us are very technical at all. Though I'm fairly good with computers, because I had my first computer in 1985.